This summer I dedicated myself to rereading the Harry Potter series and vlogging about my experience. This is Maggie Rereads Harry Potter. Part the second, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Like I talked about last time, there's a lot of foreshadowing that obviously you wouldn't have noticed unless you went back and reread the book. And one of my favorites is, all throughout this book, Ginny keeps showing up and getting very concerned at the stories about the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. And at first read through, you don't really think anything of it. It's like, oh, she's a first year, she's frightened, so that's why she's getting upset at these stories. But it turns out, and this is something you only know if you've read the book, she's concerned because she's the one who has been setting this basilisk on people. And that knowledge just made so many of the little cues and little things earlier on in the book make so much more sense. Draco tries to kill Dumbledore using a cursed necklace and accidentally gets, I think it's Angelina Johnson with it, I'm not sure. But, so Draco and his father are in Borgin and Burke's, and they come across this, a magnificent necklace of opals that had a card propped against it that read, "Caution, do not touch, cursed, has claimed the lives of 19 Muggle owners to date." There's that. There's also Harry hearing voices. It's because he's listening to the snake speak parcel tongue. While this one was a lot darker in tone than the first book, some of that early lightness still remains in this book. There were a lot of moments where I was reading this that I just kind of found myself rolling on the floor laughing. A lot of them were those moments that were clearly put in the book for the older readers of the book that children reading this book for the first time wouldn't have gotten. My personal favorite was early on in the book, there's a reference to something called the Japanese golfer joke. So, Vernon bursts into Harry's room and says, "What the devil are you doing? You've just ruined the punchline of my Japanese golfer joke. One more sound and you'll wish you'd never been born, boy." Now, to a small child, that just sounds like a nondescript joke. Like when they write half of the punchline in a movie, so it makes your characters seem funny without actually being funny. But older readers more versed in the world of dirty jokes know that the Japanese golfer joke referenced in this is this one. So a man goes to Japan on a business trip. He gets into his hotel, and the first thing he does is hire a prostitute. While the two of them are, going at it, the prostitute keeps saying something over and over again in Japanese. And he's not really sure what she's saying, but it sounds fine, and she's providing her service, so he doesn't really care. And then the next day, after the prostitute has come and gone, he goes golfing with some of his Japanese business associates. And so he goes and he makes a hole-in-one. And as it's the only Japanese he knows, he begins repeating what the woman was saying the night before. And one of his associates turns to him and says, "Why do you keep saying wrong hole?" And my other favorite was Ginny comes up to Ron and Harry to tell them something, presumably how she thinks that she's the one causing the problems with the Chamber of Secrets. But Percy gets really worried and chases her away, and Ron and Percy have a conversation that is as follows. "Percy, she was just about to tell us something important. Halfway through a gulp of tea, Percy choked." "What sort of thing?" he said, coughing. "I just asked her if she'd seen anything odd, and she started to say, 'Oh, That's nothing to do with the Chamber of Secrets,'" said Percy at once. "How do you know?" said Ron, his eyebrows raised. "Well, if you must know, Ginny, walked in on me the other day when I was, well, never mind. The point is she spotted me doing something and I asked her not to mention it to anybody. I must say, I did think she'd keep her word. It's nothing really, I'd just rather..." Harry had never seen Percy look so uncomfortable. So I want you to put your mind in the gutter with mine for a second. And tell me, what do you think that Ginny caught Percy doing? I wore my Slytherin scarf today because I wanted to discuss something that I touched upon in the last video as well. I don't understand how Slytherin continues to just be the house of evil, 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 evil. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's established in this book that Hogwarts was founded 1,000 years ago. How how on earth could the school have continued to exist with just one house that everyone that goes into it is guaranteed evil? It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense in the slightest. So there are very specific characteristics that Slytherin prized in his students. According to the Harry Potter wiki, which is my go-to source for all things Harry Potter, the Slytherin traits are as follows: resourcefulness, cunning, ambition, leadership qualities, self-preservation, determination, cleverness, fraternity, and a thirst for power. None of those things by themselves mean guaranteed evil. It's not a thing. You can't just... And Crabbe and Goyle, my friends. Crabbe and Goyle, we see more of Crabbe and Goyle in this book, and they are both boneheads. None of them have any evidence of any of those traits in this book. So clearly the Sorting Hat is just like, well, you seem like an unpleasant kind of person. Let's just put you in Slytherin. And I'm like, Sorting Hat, this is not the way that your job is supposed to go. Also, the four founders were best friends. With anything we know about Godric Gryffindor, Rowan a Ravenclaw, or Helena Hufflepuff, they would not have let a genocidal maniac start a school with them. It just doesn't make sense, given the way that this story fits in with the rest of them, for Slytherin to be entirely evil. Especially, I keep bringing this up, but it's true, especially with the scenes of inter-house unity and the sort of need for that in the later books. There's no reason to make everybody so ardently against Slytherin, and it's actually kind of like, what? I'm gonna go off on a tangent for a second, but it's a relevant tangent, I promise. So one of my other favorite things in the universe is Avatar: The Last Airbender. That show was an important part of my childhood, and it was really, really great, and I loved it, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful show. And so, as a result, I would like to call to mind the Fire Nation in that show. Avatar developed the Fire Nation so well. Just because someone was evil, you couldn't automatically assume that they were Fire Nation, and just because someone was Fire Nation, you couldn't automatically assume they were evil. Like, the gang spends an entire season living amongst the Fire Nation and learning about their customs and learning that they don't really know any different. And it's Fire Lord Ozai that is basically the bad apple that spoiled the bushel. And they also learn about how the culture of the Fire Nation tends to breed this kind of thing, but they also learn to respect the culture of the Fire Nation because they spend ages in a Fire Nation school where the Fire Nation doesn't learn about the other three nations, thinks that doesn't know that they started this war out of no other reason for a thirst for power. And they're not really allowed to have fun. The Fire Nation is a very serious nation about where a lot of emphasis is placed on you're supposed to do this, and this is the way that you're supposed to do it, and you should be smart, you should be strong, you should be capable. None of these things are inherently bad things, and none of the people from the Fire Nation are inherently bad people. Even the villain characters get so much development and so much growth in Avatar. Zuko eventually realizes that honor isn't the most important thing and goes to stop his father. Ty Lee has all of this background with growing up with all of these sisters that look just like her, and the reason that she goes to the dark side basically and works with Azula is because she wants to be an individual. Iroh is just this great leader who understands the need for all of the nations to come together, much like how inter-house unity should have been a thing, just saying. Azula is one of the best developed villains that I've ever seen in a long time. At first, when you see her, you just kind of believe that she's a sociopath, like she doesn't feel emotions and her only urges in life are urges for power. But as it goes on, you see that Ozai has gotten to her in a similar way that he's gotten to Zuko, except she's just been better at it all these years. And eventually she goes crazy because she can't get the power that she craves. That is such a well-developed villain, you guys! Oh my god. I want all of my villains to be as well-developed as Azula is. But then you've got Slytherin, where everybody is ugly and everybody is mean and nobody is ever just a genuinely good person. You've got people who are just kind of thrown in Slytherin house because they're mean. You've got people like Crabbe and Goyle that don't exemplify the Slytherin traits at all, but they just kind of are there because you can't have a not nice character in any other house. And even when not nice characters show up in other houses, it's their meanness is just conveniently written out of the storyline later on. Like in this book, for example, the Hufflepuffs turn on Harry Potter because they believe that he petrified Justin Fitch-Fletchley. But at the end of the book, they immediately go back and are immediately like, no, we're sorry. This is the weakest apology ever, but we're not in Slytherin, so it's okay. In the Harry Potter series, maybe it's because it's from Harry's perspective, there's no real such thing as a moral gray area. If a character has been established as a good character or as a member of the good houses, then they're obviously not going to be bad people. You can't be a bad person and be in Gryffindor, for instance. I feel like Harry Potter morality is like regular morality for dumb people. Later on, when we find out that Snape is a good guy, everything bad that he's ever done has been erased. Snape, as a good guy, basically gives him a free pass for everything terrible he's done to Harry over the years. In this book, for example, Lockhart gets his memory completely erased, and we find out in Order of the Phoenix that he's in St. Mungo's because he went insane. And at the time, and even then, we're still like, yeah, he deserved it. He was a bad guy. Later on in the books, when Marietta Edgecombe gets scarred on her forehead for the rest of her life, that's okay, because she's a bad guy. But ranting aside, there were also some really cute moments that made me really happy. Because, like, okay, and these are just cute. So, number one, Ron has a Chudley Cannons bedspread. He's a 12-year-old boy and he's got a bedspread of his favorite sports team. I also kind of wonder sometimes just how much Draco must be talking to his parents about Harry that Dobby already knows about Harry Potter and has heard all these wonderful stories about him. And even when they're going into Borgin and Burke's, Draco is complaining about Harry with his wonderful Harry Potter, famous Potter with his wonderful broomstick. And I'm like, yeah, I bet his broomstick's really wonderful, Draco. Yeah, I'm not a Drowry shipper, but when I see that ish, I have to have a moment with that ish. So as we continue to go on with the books in order, next is going to be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And that should be coming up within a couple days, as I'm going to start reading it right now. So, yeah, with that, I leave you with a few words: nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak, and I'll see you next time.